Welcome to Deju Daf Yomi Ba'alacha. We're learning Siman Tov Tzadi Hey, Sif Beis, Sif Gimel, and Sif Dalet Be'ezras Hashem. Yesterday we began Hilchos Yom Tov, Tov Tzadi Hey, Sif Aleph. We saw everything forbidden on Shabbos is forbidden on Yom Tov as well, with the exception of Oichel Nefesh. Oichel Nefesh is the type of malacha which is generally essentially done for food purposes, specifically for food purposes, for Meleches Losh, Meleches Bishul, which is afia, and shoichet, shchita, kneading, baking, cooking, and shechting, which is the essentials for food. Those malachas are permitted. The Shulchan Aruch says they're permitted outright. The Ramah says if one is able to do it before Yom Tov, one should do these malachas before Yom Tov, and if not, one does it on Yom Tov b'shina. There's additionally the melechas chitzah, carrying, and havara, fire making, which also permitted. We'll learn more about them later on. There's something called machshirei oichel nefesh, that is an activity done in the preparation, indirect preparation of food, which is mutar, only provided it couldn't be done before Yom Tov. Now, Sif Beis will see a selection of malachas that are prohibited on Yom Tov, although they may technically be needed sometimes in food preparations, but essentially they're done, as we'll see, for long periods, and therefore these malachas are prohibited on Yom Tov. Although we will learn in subsequent simonim, the halachas are not all the same for all these malachas. Different malachas have slightly different restrictions to them, but in general, these are malachas prohibited on Yom Tov, although they could theoretically or sometimes be needed in food preparation. Sif Beis. Katsira, harvesting. Tachina, grinding. V'tzira is also a type of harvesting. Shchita is squeezing. Tzeido, which is catching, hunting. In fact, schita really is a told of the malach of dosh, which is to thresh. Afal pishe melechas oichel nefesh, although they're needed in food preparation, asrum chachomim forbade it. It sounds quite clear from Shulchan Aruch that the prohibition of these types of malachas are only rabbinic, only midra bonon. Shulchan Aruch doesn't even begin to talk about other malachas like chayresh, plowing, and zereya, and sowing, which of course have no connection at all to no direct connection at all whatsoever to food. Nevertheless, even these malachos you may have thought would be permitted, nevertheless are forbidden because, as we'll see in the Mishnah Berurah, Osru Chacham Chazal forbade it, as we'll see straight away in Mishnah Sukkot Yud Aleph. Sukkot Yud Aleph, it's Katsira, Vuad Disha, similarly threshing, Barkoda, which is sieving, Chayagavna, and the like. Sechita, squeezing, Rotslim, and Lischet Peris, Leitzim, Shamnon, Vienon, to squeeze fruit, to exude from it wine or oil, lachila beyond to eat or to drink on Yom Tov is forbidden. Asrum chachamim, says the Mishnah Berurah. Let's explain. To minat Torah, kol malacha shu ba'oichel nefesh mutar. Any malacha which is needed for food purposes is mutar, and therefore we would have thought these should also be mutar. Like we said, losh and sheichet and bishul afiyel mutar. Ela chachamim asru dvarim shem avodah rabbah kein hani. But these involve a lot of work. As he explains, these are done in bulk. A person harvests his entire field or his vineyard, and often presses all his grapes in one go. One does grinding on grinds and quite a significant amount in one go. And if so, a person would be so involved in this extensive work. If you were afraid you wouldn't have Simchas Yom Tov, enjoyment of Yom Tov. Therefore, these malachas were forbidden because they're generally done in bulk. Also, even did them in a strange way. It's forbidden, and therefore, only things which are left permitted, only malachas which generally are actually directly and involving needed for making food on Yom Tov, and they're not done in bulk. For example, the malachas, as we said before, of losh, sheichet, oifa, and sheichet. These bishul and sheichet, those are malachas absolutely essential for eating and only done before eating. But these other malachas, koitzer, etc., tchina, betzirach, schita, sedek, and the like, these are done only in bulk, done long before eating, and therefore it's forbidden. The Mishnah Berurah did bring the word litchain, grinding, and the Shulchan Aruch also spoke about grinding. The truth is, grinding does have sometimes leniencies. It can be done on Yom Tov. We will have to see about that, Be'ezras Hashem, later in Siman Tov Kuf Dalet. Others disagree with the Lomdas, with the explanation of why these malachas are forbidden. They say that these malachas are forbidden even if they're needed for food purposes. The Torah only permitted food malachas, only malachas which are done for this particular day, as we said, kneading and baking, etc. And those malachas, which are malachas are needed for food, on the actual day of Yom Tov, and that's where they're normally prepared. We'll discuss more about all of this in subsequent simonim, each malacha in its time. Seif Gimel. The Shulchan Aruch continues to explain the categories which have similarities and the categories have differences between Hilchos Shabbos and Yom Tov, and now we're going to discuss animals. Says the Shulchan Aruch from the Rambam, Ein mitziin maso ala behema b'Yom Tov. One doesn't put a item on an animal to carry outside on Yom Tov. Now, the truth is, when it comes to animals, there's various different issues that could involve prohibitions on Shabbos with regard to animals, and we'll see how they're reflected in Hilchos Yom Tov. First of all, there's a mitzvah saseh. It's not one of the 39 malachas. A mitzvah saseh. Pasuk says, "L'man ganuach shorecha chaverecha," that your animal should rest. And from here we see a person has an animal. He has to, as a mitzvah saseh, positive command to allow it to rest. That's a din on Shabbos, and it's questionable if it applies to Yom Tov as well. It's discussed in Siman Reish Mem Gimel. The Ramos says only applies on Shabbos because it's not one of the malachas, the lavates malachas. They are transferred into Yom Tov as well. But this is an independent positive command. The mitzvah saseh l'man yanuach. The Ramos says it doesn't apply on Yom Tov. Others Marshalas disagree. It does apply on Yom Tov. But that's one issue. Another potential issue is mechama acha behemtoi, which means one mustn't encourage or instigate any animal to do a malacha on Shabbos, even if it's not my own animal. But this is only also if I instigate it, I encourage it, not if I just allow it to go out of its own accord. It's called mechama. Again, mechama is also on Shabbos. It's not one of the lamates malachas. It's a lav. The Pasuk says leisas l'chol malacha atzal behemtecha, your animal. So therefore, in fact, it's not even your animal. Any animal, you mustn't instigate or put something, encourage an animal to do a malacha on Shabbos. And again, there's a question if that lav applies on Yom Tov as well. That's discussed again in Siman Reish Mem Vav. Additionally, on Yom Tov, with Rabbanon Chazal forbade the person making any usage of an animal, putting something on an animal, taking something off an animal, sitting on an animal, climbing on an animal, etc. Is an issa d'Rabbanon to do so because of the concern a person may break a stick in order to make the animal move. So that's called mishtamash b'ba'alei chayim, with permission to use an animal on Shabbos. And there's also perhaps an issa d'Rabbanon of the dechol of using an animal on Shabbos. The Shulchan Aruch here just says, on Yom Tov one can't put a load on an animal and allow it to go outside. It's questionable exactly what exactly is this concern here. Of those four concerns, is it shvisas behemtai? Is it mechama? Is it mishtamash b'alei chayim? Or is it not to do something which is of the dechol? Says the Mishnah Brurus if gotten yodalet. Ein mitziin masa, one can't take out a load. According to the Ramah in Siman Reish Mem Vav in Hilchos Shabbos, there's no issa shvisas behemta on Yom Tov. So one has to say it's just an issa d'Rabbanon not to do that activity that a person will do during the week. It's not Yom Tov dik. Therefore, one mustn't do this on Shabbos. Because there's no intrinsic issa by shvisas behemta, according to the Ramah. And if that's the case, it's even prohibited even if the animal doesn't take the item outside and transgress issa. So it's just even if it's within one area, it's also it's wochendik. It's like something one does during the week. These are four lashon dafka. It's not to do with carrying outside. Rather, it's the fact the animal is doing a weekday activity by having something on it, even within one rishus. Well, if you look there, we'll see. Others disagree. They say no, the mitzvah shvisas behemta applies on Yom Tov like on Shabbos. And more so the malacha of mechama, which means to instigate or encourage an animal to do a malacha, and in fact that applies to any animal. Shvisas behemta is only one's own animal. Therefore, according to this opinion, these opinions, then learn the Sif Kipshutai. One can read the Sif as its at face value, that the prohibition is to encourage an animal, an animal, or even to allow one's own animal to carry this item on Yom Tov would infringe on these two issues of Shvisas Behemtoi and Mecham Acha Behemtoi, and therefore it would be simple. But Isur Deraisa Kam Mechab, the Mechab is referring to one of these or both of these Isurim, Isurei Torah, that he's saying that applies on Yom Tov as well as on Shabbos. Yeah, but then says the Mishnah Brura, if we say that there's an Isser Shvisas Behemtoi on Shabbos, if so, Yom Tov I should say, Shaykh Vazek Kol Adinim Hanemorim Ben Yirzel Lil Shabbos Shinhei. All the halachos in Shinhei. One animal can go out wearing, and what it can't go out and wearing would also be the same halachos on Yom Tov. If Shvisas Behemtoi Mechamer, if these halachos apply on Yom Tov like on Shabbos, and if not, then the Shulchan Aruch is just telling us it's an issue of not the animal shouldn't go the same way it goes out during the week, or like the Shatzian and Ois Test says, perhaps the issue in our Sif is a Mishtamash B'Alei not to use an animal like on Hilchos Shabbos. We can't use an animal, but so to on during the week, just so on Yom Tov, for example, to go climb on the animal, or come off an animal, etc., as we mentioned before. So again, the Sif says there's a definite prohibition which applies to an animal, putting something on an animal on Yom Tov. The question is, what is the prohibition? Is it mechamer, shvisas behemtoi? Is it just of the dechayil, or is it just the shvisas behemtoi? So if Dalet says the Shulchan Aruch muksa. Now again, with regard to muksa, the Shulchan Aruch here is referring not just to a general muksa. I mean, muksa got many different facets. There's a Meiri somewhere that says that there's 42 different types of muksa, although normally you can sort of wind them down to about 7 types of muksa, which really have about 3 different categories of muksa. But anyway, the muksa which we're discussing here is specifically referring to food items that a person has designated that he doesn't plan to eat these food items in the short term. And that's what we're referring to here. The Shulchan Aruch says an interesting point. Now, although normally Yom Tov has a more lenient din than Shabbos, but here, with regard to these type of muksa items, again, food items that a person has designated not to eat in the short term, as we'll see, although on Shabbos is permitted, then the day it's a food item. On Yom Tov, it has a more strict din, but Asru and Chazal forbade it. And the reason they forbade it is because there's a concern. If we allow a person to be so lenient with these items on Yom Tov, a person may come to be mezalzel in other elements of Yom Tov and not to treat Yom Tov correctly. And the Shulchan Aruch says these types of muksa items, Shabbos they're prohibited, but on Yom Tov they are permitted. Sorry, Shabbos they're permitted, and on Yom Tov they are prohibited. And Mechaber says these types of muksa are also on Yom Tov. And we'll see that the Ramah holds they're mutter like Shabbos. Yesh matir muksa afilu b'Yom Tov. Some permit this type of muksa even on Yom Tov, just like on Shabbos. But with regard to noiled, which is a more different type of category of muksa, something which sort of is born or only became muksa on Yom Tov, also the devim afilu b'Shabbos, then this shitta holds is also even on Shabbos. This shitta would agree to noiled, that noiled is prohibited, it's prohibited even on Shabbos. Let's take a look at the Mishnah Bruras have gotten Tesavov, muksa. What type of category of muksa are we discussing? What type of things are we discussing? Items are we discussing that on Shabbos they're permitted, when Yom Tov the Mechaber holds they are prohibited. Sif Katan Tesva Muksa. Alpha Pisho Mutter, that's mutter on Shabbos, the Mechaber holds it's also on Yom Tov. Pirosh it means Sif Katan Tesva. To the El, B'Simen Shin Yud B'Spoi Dish Kam Mini Muksa Mutar B'Shabbos. There are types of muksa permitted on Shabbos. Kegoin muksa machmas she'eber deschayra. Person has a food item which is expected or designated to be sold. Or person has a food item that he's put into a warehouse. He's not planning to take this food item from the warehouse in the short or medium term. By muksa machmas meals, or something which is muksa because of it's dirty or it's disdainful. These type of muksas, and these type of muksas, Shabbos, which is strict to a person, then Chazal felt it was okay to be lenient with. We're not concerned in the title of a muksa. If we permit him to move this type of item, also he'll be strict on other Shabbos Isurim. Have beyond of the Kilila, beyond of which is more lenient in general. We've seen it has leniencies. We've seen the Nefesh Malachas are permitted. We've seen Lash, Bishul, Weifer, Shchita is permitted. We've seen Hitzar Navar has leniencies, etc. Machshirei Nefesh also mutter if you couldn't have done it before Yom Tov, etc. So therefore, we would also be lenient with these types of muksa items. We're also going to be lenient with the other prohibitions of Yom Tov. And therefore, also Chazal forbade moving or eating these food items which are designated for sale, etc., put away without the mindset to intend to use it in the short term. The fees are in according to his reasoning. One has an animal which is generally used for its milk, not to be eaten. It's kept for its milk. A person has a chicken. The chicken is not for eating. It's kept for eggs, to make eggs. Or an ox which is not expected to be slaughtered. It's expected to it's used for plowing. Also, they would be included in this category. Now, those shchitas normally mutter on Yom Tov, but from these animals would be prohibited because they're muksa. Actually, so how one would be allowed to shech these animals on Yom Tov or eat these food items on Yom Tov, which are normally not expected to be eaten? The only way to do so would be by designating them before Yom Tov to show he wants to eat them on Yom Tov. Anything similar, it will need a designation before Yom Tov. Something which is prohibited because of this noided issue. It's sort of like a newly born prohibition of muksa on Yom Tov. We'll see in a moment. Of course, the Mechaber holds it also on Yom Tov. Mechaber even prohibits food item which was expected not to be eaten, so we'll also prohibit this noiled concern, which we'll discuss in a minute. However, Yesh Matirin, the Ramos says that others permit it. He said just like on Shabbos, the food item is permitted regardless of whether it's expected to be not to be eaten in the short term or yes to eat in the short term. So to Yom Tov it's also mutter. Because of Magen Avraham, to permit these food items that they're not muksa on Yom Tov, like they're not muksa on Shabbos. However, even those who permit this type of muksa, they prohibit noilad. Noilad needs to be born. Sif Katan Yud Zayin. Avon noilad also the devrei mafira b'Shabbos. So noilad is also, even according to the Gemara, permits these food items and says they're not muksa on Shabbos. Noilad is worse. Sif Katan Yud Zayin. After Yesh Poskim Shematir and after Muksas are noted, there are Poskim who permit even this noted Muksa. Haramah leRotza Litzvis Kadatam was there. The Ramah did not want to take on like this opinion. El Kois and Poskim rather like the opinions the Machmir and Al Kaponim the Muksas are noted who prohibit the noted Muksa on the Yom Tov. Because we'll have to see exactly examples of this in a minute. Because the Achronim say that after Shabbos Nagdinon the Ikar Hata Afilu Muksa to noted on Shabbos we're lenient with the Muksa of called noted. Lokapad is far not like this opinion. The Kamakman of the rest, but Yom Tov. Ein lahatal koponim muksa to noted, we are stringent with the muksa of noted. The fees are therefore. Ein latatal that so much in his parakim in our boss of beyond. One has a meat and the bones break off the meat on Yom Tov. So one would have thought this is actually an example of something which is noted. Because the Atzomos, as the Mishnah would explain, although the bones are fit for dogs, but before Yom Tov, they were attached to meat, and therefore the bones were part of edible food for humans. On Yom Tov, it become food edible only for animals. This is considered noida, the change of status, a downgrade change of status, and the Ramah says that therefore these bones will become muksa on Yom Tov, although they would not be muksa on Shabbos. Yeah. Now, the remark continues. Again, so just to summarize, muksa. We're discussing here a food item. And this food item is designated not to be eaten in the short term. For example, put in a warehouse. For example, it's an animal which is used to which is used to give milk, or an animal which is expected, which is meant the chicken for its eggs, etc. It's not expected to be eaten. And there's a machlokes between the Mechaber and the Ramah, whether it's muksa. The Mechaber holds it is muksa, that it's has a more stringent din than on Shabbos, because the concern if you be lenient with regard to muksa on Yom Tov, be lenient with other things also on Yom Tov. The Ramah says it's permitted, but the Ramah agrees that the noilad is the type of muksa which is prohibited on Yom Tov. For example, these bones that when Yom Tov come in were machal be'odom, fit for human consumption, and then as Yom Tov progressed, they broke off the meat, and now they're only fit for animal consumption. The Ramah says this is muksa. Now the Ramah takes an interesting twist. He's saying as follows. He's going back on the opinion of the Mechaber. Again, the Mechaber said a food item that is not designated, not expected to be eaten, rather is put in a warehouse, etc. The Mechaber said it's muksa on Yom Tov. Nevertheless, says the Ramah, v'chol muksa she'ein ba'alei chaim. Any muksa which is not an animal, kagoin oitzer shel peris v'eitzim, if one has a storehouse which has got food in it, even according to the Mechaber, who says it's muksa, but nevertheless, sagi k'shayema mikan aninot, one can designate food item before Shabbos. Just verbal designation is enough. It doesn't need to mark which one exactly is going to be taken on Yom Tov. One can simply designate before Yom Tov an item which was in the storehouse, and then it won't be muksa on Yom Tov. Now, it's interesting that Ramah says that this designation only helps with food items which are not living animals. It wouldn't help for that chicken which you're keeping for its eggs, or the animal which you keep for milking. Says the Mishnah Berurah Sif Kotzon Yud Ches. Again, he's going on the Mechaber. Koyat the Sfar Rishon is going on the Mechaber, the muksa also, who says these types of muksa are forbidden. So the Matir in muksa, those who permit muksa, the Ramah in Tzarech HaMiri don't need any designation. And a begrogus for tzimukim, with the exception, even the Ramah agrees with a very severe type of muksa, grogus for tzimukim. For example, one has dry figs and dates and grapes. A person may want to put it, actually, if a person takes these fruit and puts it on the roof to dry, that's a very more severe type of muksa, and that's vafilu b'Shabbos also. Then it will be even prohibited on Shabbos. So we're excluding this very severe type of muksa with regard to putting, where a person actually actively pushes aside the usage of these items by putting them out to dry. So assuming that's not the case, assuming it's just a food which is in a standard state of being in a warehouse, etc., so then a person could designate them before Yom Tov by simply saying, I'd like to take from here. And on Yom Tov, he will actually pick one out, pick one food item that he wants on Yom Tov, and it will be retroactively determined that this was the one which was designated. But that doesn't apply to Baalei Chaim, to live animals. To Baalei Chaim, with live items, the Mahani Kashim canonical designation is not good enough. A verbal elasarach lefaret, one has to say clearly, Zer v'sani notel, not just to say in general, I will take one tomorrow. And then on Yom Tov, when you pick one out, that will have been the one that I designated yesterday by retroactive predetermined that this was the one to be chosen, but rather one has to be more specific with regard to Baalei Chaim and say, I want this specific one. So again, with Baalei Chaim, even if you hold this muksa like Mechaber does, because it wasn't expected to be eaten, but if one designates specifically this specific chicken I want to shech tomorrow, that's fine. Verbal designation in general, mekanin in it'll from here I will take tomorrow is okay for a warehouse of fruit and wood, etc. So that means he only plans to take from it afterwards. Nevertheless, you can say before Yom Tov, I plan to take from one of these tomorrow, from somewhere in this warehouse tomorrow, and that's okay. Similarly with fruit that is to be sold, of muksa which is sitting in a warehouse, etc. Every person has a warehouse with these fruits which is not dried up yet completely, and therefore they're still edible. It could be still wants them. It's not considered absolute. He's not pushed them aside, not to use them as well on Yom Tov, and you can just say before Yom Tov, somewhere from this warehouse I'm going to take tomorrow, and then tomorrow when he takes it, that will be considered the one he always had designated. It's good enough just to say this. The ones he takes tomorrow, it's considered that retroactively it was predetermined that these would be the ones designated. These ones he planned with his, he planned to take. The Milsa de Rabbanon came around the Breira. This idea of predetermination is called Breira. Since it works with regard to in honor of Rabbanon, Muksa is Rabbanon, and therefore one can make this general statement before Yom Tov. I will take food from here, and Yom Tov later when he takes one, that will always have been the one which was determined before Yom Tov to be used on Yom Tov. So again, excuse me. So we need to just have learned 3 important seifim to get today. We're going to continue tomorrow with regards to this seif. Let's just discuss what we learned today. In seif base, we saw that the malachas that you may have thought are oichel nefesh type of malachas, and they should be permitted on Yom Tov, but they're not. Since these malachas are normally performed in bulk, perhaps even on the farm or in the collective period before it gets to the field, and they involve significant amount of work. Then, as I said, they're normally done in bulk. They're prohibited on Yom Tov. Katsira, tchina, batsira, schita, seder, harvesting, grinding, squeezing, threshing, hunting, etc. These are all prohibited in Yom Tov. The Shulchan Aruch says it's also midrabanan. Other places say also in Torah. They're included in Oichel Nefesh. However you learn, they are also on Yom Tov. They're not the same as losh, kneading, sheichet, shechting, and afir and bishul, which are types of cooking. We also saw in Sif Gimel that one can't load an animal on Yom Tov. The reason is not clear. Is it because of shvisus behemtoi, which is a positive command to allow one's animal to rest? Is it because of mechame, which is the negative command not to encourage any animal to do work? Is it the rabbanon of the dechol, looks like a weekday activity? Or is it because mishtamish balechem adin the rabbanon not to make use of an animal on Shabbos and also Yom Tov as well? Not clear what the prohibition is. In Sif Daled, we're discussing another possible distinction between Shabbos and Yom Tov with regards to a storehouse of food or something similar, warehouse of food, or any food item which a person does not expect to eat, which includes a live animal which a person doesn't expect to eat. He's expected to keep it alive because he needs it for his eggs or for his milk, etc. Or he needs his animal to plow the land for him. Any such food item, there's a question: does it have the same lenient din as of Shabbos? They wouldn't be muksa, or would it have to be a stricter din? In Yom Tov, they do forbid it, and they call it muksa, so the person won't become lenient with regards to Hilchos Yom Tov. The Chabad holds it is muksa, the Ramah holds it's not muksa. The Ramah agrees that a noilid is also on Yom Tov. For example, meat that breaks off a bone, breaks off from meat on Yom Tov. Although when Yom Tov came in, it was royal machal adar, and now it's only royal machal behemoth, only fit for animal food. The bone, nevertheless, it's considered noilid, it's considered a new entity. It's also on Yom Tov, even according to the Mechaber. Even according to the Ramah, I should say. Again, the Mechaber holds that the standard muksa, the food muksa put in the warehouse, etc., is muksa on Yom Tov. The Ramah holds it's muta on Yom Tov. Says the Ramah, even the Mechaber, who holds that food item, the warehouse, etc., is muksa, but one can make a general statement before Yom Tov and say that I'll take somewhere from this warehouse food tomorrow, and then later on Yom Tov, actually when he takes it, it will always be considered that lemafreya, it was always this particular food item which was designated from before Yom Tov, because by Dinei D'Rabbanan like Muksa, one applies the din of Breira, that one can say that was predetermined this particular item. This din of Breira, however, doesn't apply to an animal, a live animal, and also doesn't apply to the excessive type of Muksa of the person pushed it out of sight and out of mind by putting some fruit to dry. That's clearly a firm action not to want to take this food, and therefore this predetermination wouldn't work. As Hashem, tomorrow we'll continue with the rest of Seif Dalet.